At my father's funeral, my boyfriend arrived late with a strange woman in his arms. The woman was wearing a red dress, holding her slightly pregnant belly, with a provocative look on her face. "I'm pregnant with your father's child. Your father left a will, asking you to leave the house with nothing." "Leaving the house with nothing, that's great, someone will pay off the debt my father owed." The next second, my boyfriend Barry took out 2 red books and handed them to me. I looked carefully at the name on the marriage certificate. "Lucy, I've heard of it, my father's lover. Don't blame me for being ruthless. All I want is X group." I knew this a long time ago, but I was too busy with work some time ago to break up with him. "Lucy is pregnant with a boy, and your father said he would leave the company to the baby in her belly." I looked Lucy up and down. She was fair and tender, and her gestures were full of a lovable aura. She should be able to make a lot of money. After all, my father owed a lot of money. I'm afraid I would have to start working from the Warring States period to pay off my debts. Now, I can just start working from the Republic of China. Lucy misunderstood my look, took out the will and handed it to the lawyer, saying that it was left by my father. The content roughly stated that the company was left to Lucy, and the villa and money were left to me. My eyes suddenly widened, and I repeatedly confirmed the authenticity of the will with the lawyer. "Yes, Ms. Vicky, the will is authentic and valid. From now on, X Group will have nothing to do with you. The only things you will inherit are 2 villas and 20 million in cash." My father was so good to me that he left these things to me even after his death. He tried so hard to stop me from mortgaging the villa because he wanted to leave me some money to live on. I don't know where he got the 20 million from to leave it to me. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but cry out loud with my hands covering my mouth. Barry and Lucy looked at me like this and smiled even more smugly, with faces that looked like they had succeeded. I was afraid that they would not be able to pay back the money, so I kindly reminded them. "Barry, does my dad have any other mistresses or illegitimate children? Go find them. I'm afraid that the 2 of you can't hold on to X Group. After all, 1 more person means more strength. If we calculate the time, the banks and creditors will come to collect the debts in a month." Lucy obviously misunderstood and snorted. "Don't bother with that. X Group will belong to me, Lucy, from today on." I took the money and bought a ticket to leave City G overnight. Being late would be disrespectful to my father. I had just packed my luggage and was about to leave when Lucy and her bodyguard stopped me at the door of the villa. I felt a little guilty, wondering if I had been discovered. I pretended to be calm and said with a cold face, "What do you want to do?" "Don't be so nervous." Lucy took out a share transfer contract from her bag. "Although I inherited your father's shares, I remember that you also have a 20% stake in the company." After hearing what she said, I almost couldn't help laughing out loud. I transferred this 20% share to him long ago when I first discovered Barry hooking up with a rich woman. Didn't Barry tell Lucy that he was married? Thinking of this, I looked at her with a little pity. "Since you are pregnant with my father's child, a friendly reminder that the company's share change records can be checked." Lucy's smile froze instantly, and she lowered her head to take out her phone and operated it for a while. I was too lazy to continue watching the show, so I picked up my luggage and turned to leave. But the bodyguards who came with Lucy surrounded me, snatched my luggage and cell phone, and forced me into the car. I was struggling to think of a solution when Lucy got into the car with a gloomy face. I could tell from her expression that she had checked. I couldn't help but say, "Kidnapping is illegal. Tell her to shut up." Lucy signaled the bodyguard to cover my mouth. The bodyguard hesitated and said tremblingly, "This is another price." Lucy's face darkened again. Then she took a deep breath and explained to me, "Gary, he has 5% of the shares of X Group, and he must see you, otherwise he won't sign." How did she know that I was going to find Gary and ask him to transfer the shares quickly? Not only did it save me the taxi fare, but it also solved the issue of subsequent ownership of the shares. God is really good to me. Soon the car drove into Gary's research institute. Gary is a poor student sponsored by my father, 2 years younger than me. I watched him skip grades all the way, from 2 grades lower than me to graduating 2 years earlier than me, and even got a doctorate degree. After graduation, he wanted to come to my dad's company to help out and repay my dad for raising him all these years. But my dad didn't agree, because he thought that working would bury his talent. So I fully support Gary to go to graduate school and serve the country. This 5% of shares is my father's graduation gift to him. My father raised him as his son-in-law. Unfortunately, I was rebellious and met Barry, who was good at sweet talk, so the matter was left unresolved. Since Barry and I started dating, I have only seen Gary a few times. He seemed to be avoiding me on purpose. Plus, after the company got into trouble, my father and I were busy trying to save ourselves, so we contacted each other even less. He still didn't know about the company's situation, nor did he know about my father's death. Passing through layers of guards, I saw a tall and handsome figure busy among the instruments, looking as serious and careful as before. Lucy coughed twice impatiently. "I brought Vicky, please sign." Gary then looked up, ignored Lucy's words, and walked straight to me. I was a little nervous, and my fingers unconsciously rubbed the hem of my clothes. Gary frowned slightly. "Where's Barry?" Before I could say anything, Lucy smiled with malicious intent. "Does Dr. Gary need help with my husband?" After saying that, Lucy held her lower back as if to show off, and puffed out her not-so-obvious belly. The meaning of the action was self-evident. Gary was such a smart man that he immediately guessed what was going on. He took off his glasses, casually took a tissue, and slowly wiped the non-existent dust off his glasses. "Vicky, you've grown up. You're using your dad's money to support Barry and another woman's child," Gary said calmly, without a trace of emotion. I knew he was angry. No one knows Gary better than me, and I can see all his emotions. For example, his other hand was clenched on the frame of his glasses until it turned blue. He must have thought that I loved Barry so deeply that I was willing to use myself as nutrients to nourish Barry's blossoming. I even went so far as to accompany a woman who was pregnant with Barry's child to ask him for shares. I nodded silently, pretending to be a hopeless love-brained person. "Transfer the shares to her, Gary." Gary's index finger was almost deformed, but his movements were still elegant and his voice was steady. 100 million. Lucy yelled, 100 million? You want 100 million for just 5% of the shares? I felt helpless. At the best time of X Group, the valuation of 5% of the shares was less than 100 million. Gary offered a sky-high price, and it was obvious that he didn't want to negotiate. I took a deep breath and was about to use my trump card when Lucy seemed to have thought of a good idea and a gleam of light flashed in her eyes. "Vicky, you let Gary sign the contract, and I'll let Barry stay with you for one night." Thinking of Barry's mouth, which had licked so many rich women, I almost vomited the food I had eaten the previous night. I swallowed hard to suppress the nausea. Lucy is so awesome. Even though this idea is not very good, it at least solved my urgent problem. I really don't want to use the trump card. I held my breath for a long time, until tears welled up in the corners of my eyes, then I slowly spoke. "Gary, give it to her. I beg you." "Are you serious?" Gary's voice was trembling. I looked up at Gary, tears just held back sliding down my cheeks. Snap. The lens shattered and scattered all over the floor. Lucy was very considerate and tore off a piece of white paper and wrote on it, 5% of X Group's shares in exchange for Barry spending a night with Vicky. She kindly signed the date and name and even put a handprint on it and gave it to me. My mouth twitched, but for the sake of the overall situation, I endured the discomfort and took the note from Lucy with trembling hands. This scene looked different in Gary's eyes. He snatched the note from my hand, crumpled it up and threw it into the trash can. I couldn't tell whether his tone was anger or sadness. "Vicky, you disappoint me so much. Brother, I am saving you now. I can't explain it to Gary too clearly. I just hope he can indulge my unreasonable behavior again like before. But this time I made a mistake." He simply closed the door of the laboratory, rang the guard bell on the wall, and drove us out. On the way out, I seemed to hear the sound of something being smashed behind me. We were politely asked by the guards to leave the institute. Lucy was so angry that she kicked the Lamborghini worth tens of millions with her Valentino high heels. I calculated the repair costs for her in my mind, 20,000, 40,000, 60,000. TSK, if I remember correctly, my dad had already mortgaged this car to Edward 2 months ago. Edward's youngest son loves playing with cars, and he specifically asked my dad to take good care of the car, with the original paint, so that he could drive it away when he returned to the country in a month. I quietly lit a candle for Lucy. After a while, she looked like she was tired of kicking, and she put on her arrogant look again and rushed to me angrily. "Vicky, don't blame me for not reminding you. If the share transfer agreement cannot be signed, I promise that you will never see Barry in your life." I was actually quite curious about how Lucy was so sure that I was still in love with that jerk. But it was better this way, so I didn't have to make excuses. I don't care what method you use, just sign the contract and give it to me tomorrow, otherwise, I continued, otherwise you won't be able to see Barry in your lifetime, right? Lucy was stunned. Her momentum instantly dropped by half when I interrupted her, but she still finished the second half of the sentence dryly. Men are like that. I can see that Gary likes you. If you spend a night with him, you will naturally get his autograph. Her three views are totally twisted. Just now she betrayed her husband, and now she wants to betray me. In her mind, it seems that there is nothing that can't be solved by spending one night with him. I didn't want to hear any more from her, so I lowered my head and secretly rolled my eyes. Lucy mistook it for a nod, so she smiled even more ostentatiously, quickly stuffed the contract into my hand, and left with a group of bodyguards. I'm afraid you can't get a taxi within 5 kilometers of this place. But I soon realized that I didn't need to worry about how to get home, I just needed to worry about myself. I had just taken out my phone for less than a second when a shadow suddenly appeared on the screen and a faint, cool minty scent lingered at my nose. It was Gary. Without saying a word, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me into the car in a forceful manner. The atmosphere was frozen to the freezing point. I hesitated for a long time in my heart, and then I thought that I should get the business done first. The next second, my eyes widened suddenly, and the soft touch of lips and the increasingly strong minty scent sprayed on my face. For a moment, all the little details between me and Gary played in my mind. I admit that I had feelings for him before, but I felt offended by the way he was doing now. I struggled hard, trying to get out of his arms. The more I struggled, the harder he got. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I bit him hard. He let go in pain, and I slapped Gary in the face. You bastard. Gary touched his slightly red face from my beating. He smiled frivolously, but tears oozed from the corners of his eyes. He snatched the contract from my arms and quickly signed his name. Sister, I'll help you. There was a deep sadness in Gary's voice, and I shuddered unconsciously. He had never called me sister, no matter how I threatened or tempted him. Gary seemed like he wanted to say something. He opened his mouth for a long time but no words came out. He just took out a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to me. It was the share transfer agreement written by Lucy. He picked it up again. I unfolded the paper and saw it was stained with tears. My heart ached and I tore the paper into pieces. Damn Barry and Lucy, not only did they disgust me, but they also made Gary sad. An inexplicable anger burned in my heart. Barry betrayed me, Lucy betrayed my father, and the two of them teamed up to plot against my father's inheritance. From the beginning, they wanted to kill us all. I originally thought that letting them bear the debt would be enough, but now I suddenly feel that this is not enough. I am shaking with anger. A white hand came up to me, and Gary seemed to be stunned by my action of tearing the paper. He looked so cute with tears in his eyes and his head tilted. Vicky, he still looked a little aggrieved, and all the sadness was gone. I moved closer, took out my phone, and took a photo with Gary face to face. He casually posted the photo on his social media with the caption, "The years are quiet and good, visible only to Barry." He then took a photo of the signed contract and sent it to Lucy. I suddenly didn't want to leave anymore. I wanted to watch them quarrel with each other. As I expected, as soon as the message was sent, Lucy replied immediately, "I'll be there soon. Tomorrow, at 10 o'clock, see you at my villa." Barry also left me a message in a self-indulgent manner. "Vicky, I'm with Lucy because of you. You'll understand later. Don't blame me. In fact, I love you the most." I opened Barry's chat box expressionlessly and sent him a copy of the contract I had just shot. "I know you've worked hard and endured the humiliation. I asked Gary to sign this transfer contract to Lucy. She said you asked her to come. Barry, I wish you happiness." After saying that, I turned off my phone. I turned my head to look at the injured Gary. At this time, Gary probably knew what I wanted to do. He smiled brightly, his ears turned slightly red, and he stared at me with burning eyes. "Vicky, you did it on purpose." I nodded and reached out to ruffle Gary's hair, just like before. "Oh, my brother is too smart." As a big sister, I don't feel any sense of accomplishment at all. It was clearly a compliment, but Gary frowned when he heard it. "Vicky, I don't want to be your brother." My heart skipped a beat, and now I had time to look at Gary carefully. In just a few years, he has matured a lot. The young boy has grown into a man who can stand shoulder to shoulder with me. Under Gary's expectant gaze, I took out a thick stack of documents from my bag. There is also a thin accidental death certificate and an insurance policy. I'm sorry, Gary, it's not that I can't see your expectations, but my father paved the way for me with his life, and I want to finish it first. My father died in an accident at a construction site, and I always thought it was an accident until I heard about the 20 million yuan in the will and found the insurance policy my father had put under my pillow when I went home and made the bed. The exhaustion and sadness of the past few days overwhelmed me in an instant the moment I found the insurance policy. I lay on the head of the bed and cried inconsolably, but there was no longer a father who would touch my head and whisper to comfort me. At this time, Gary, who had finished flipping through the documents, finally saw the last file. He stared at it for a long time until the sun completely set. He asked me in a dry and hoarse voice, "Has the funeral been held?" "Did it, yesterday. Dad left a will. The company was left to Lucy's unborn baby, and the house and compensation were left to me." A sour feeling arose in my heart, and the scenery in front of me became hazy and blurred. I turned around and found myself reflected in the car window, already sobbing. Gary hugged me and I didn't refuse. "Vicky, I want to see the financial report to see how the company got to this point in just 2 years." Gary suspected that it was man-made. Indeed, X Group, which seemed to be in its heyday 2 years ago, suddenly collapsed. Any normal person would be suspicious. But he didn't know that X Group was only prosperous on the surface. The problem of capital chain has been going on for a long time. I once asked my father why he didn't withdraw earlier, but he just looked at me with guilt with bloodshot eyes. "Vicky, if we leave, what will happen to these employees?" A large number of people employed in the group's factories are deaf and mute, and he is worried that they will lose their jobs if the company is sold. I used to be very puzzled by my father's behavior, but now I suddenly felt a surge of urge in my heart. I want to take over the factory run by my father, which has several deaf and mute employees. Calculating the money I had left, if I sold the villa I could just barely buy those factories. I told Gary about my idea and he said he was willing to support me to the best of his ability. But regarding the acquisition funds, he had other ideas. "Barry and Lucy must have cheated you and your father out of a lot of money over the years." Gary drove me back to the villa. My cell phone was on and there were over 99 messages and over 40 missed calls, all from Barry. I flipped through the pages from top to bottom, and all I saw were sweet words to coax me and curses at Lucy. It's worth mentioning that he said he was negotiating terms with the company's retail investors. Everything has been almost settled, and he will just have to wait for Lucy to successfully inherit the estate in a week before he files for divorce. They did not sign a prenuptial agreement, so he can take half of Lucy's property. After the divorce, he can easily become the largest shareholder of X Group. Everything he is doing now is to take back X Group for me. Well, you said it as if it were true. After all, you just want Gary's 5% of the shares. Why would I fall for such a person before? I wonder what Lucy's expression would be when she saw these messages. "See you at my villa at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning." After replying the messages, Gary and I sat down at what used to be my dad's desk and sorted out the materials for several deaf-mute factories. Early the next morning, Lucy banged on the door downstairs. If you knew she was asking for my help, you might think she was trying to break down my door. I yawned and went to open the door. "It's so early. We agreed to meet at 10 a.m., but it's only 7 a.m. Lucy said impatiently, "Where's the contract?" I pretended to be surprised. "Don't you know?" Han looked at me suspiciously. "Know what?" Barry said he was determined to get this share. I handed Lucy the document that Gary and I had prepared yesterday. It contained information about the new energy subsidiary of X Group that seemed to be the most profitable. "Take a look at the conditions he offered." Lucy looked unconvinced, but still took the document and flipped through it. Gary had specially marked the valuation on the last page in case she didn't understand. Sure enough, the moment Lucy turned to the last page, her pupils suddenly widened and her face showed a wonderful expression, but after a while, she laughed softly twice. He raised his head and looked at me sinisterly. "You lied to me. Barry can't afford such a high price." I acted impatient. "Barry will be here at 10 o'clock. You can tell if it's true or not by just looking at it." "Why should I wait until 10 o'clock? Since the contract has been signed, I can just grab it." She glanced at the bodyguards behind her and looked at me with contempt. "As you wish." Then I turned sideways to reveal Gary's guards who were sitting in the restaurant having breakfast. They were all wearing military uniforms and ranks. Normally, someone at Gary's level shouldn't have any guards, but in view of Lucy's behavior yesterday, he specially asked the guards on shift at the institute to help him today. Lucy got scared. Seeing that she couldn't snatch it away by force, she reluctantly pulled up the corner of her mouth and gave me a smile. At the same time, there was another knock on the door. When I opened the door, Barry was standing at my door with a big bouquet of roses in a coquettish posture. "Vicky, only the most delicate flowers can match the most beautiful you." As soon as I finished speaking, I took a step aside, revealing Lucy sitting on the sofa in the living room. Our eyes met and the corners of my lips curled up in a happy arc. It turns out that the smile will not disappear, it will only shift. As expected of a scumbag meeting a girl, both of them have a strong sense of time. Gary made a perfect finishing move. Lucy didn't know whether she was stimulated by the flowers in Barry's arms or the word couple mentioned by Gary, so she picked up the teacup and fruit plate and started to attack Barry. After smashing the things on the table, she started to smash the pillows on the sofa. TSK, her fighting ability is not good enough. I quickly handed her the vase, teapot and vegetable bowl. In the end, I had delivered all the pots and pans in the house. I stood in the kitchen, hesitated for only a second, then picked up the 8-piece kitchen knife set and came out. Lucy was furious and started throwing whatever I handed her. Barry was terrified and kept dodging, muttering to Lucy to watch her stomach. I sneered when I heard this. How could he be telling Lucy to be careful with her stomach? He was telling Lucy to be careful with the huge inheritance. Lucy was tired from the fight and sat on the sofa gasping for breath. Barry, with bruises all over his body, came up carefully and touched her belly, while his eyes did not forget to communicate with me. It's really disgusting. They haven't forgotten their original intention. After a break, they seemed to have reached an agreement and took turns to ask me for Gary's shares. I sat on one of the few intact chairs in the house and blew on my tea. The shares belonged to Gary. Why would you look for me? Seeing my attitude, they immediately turned their eyes to Gary behind them. Just as they were about to speak, I interrupted them. Wait, Lucy, compensate me for the furniture you smashed first. Lucy's attitude was still arrogant, completely different from the weak and vulnerable look she had when they first met. I'll pay it back. My father used to like to collect some antique jades whenever he had nothing to do. Of course, the valuable ones have been sold to pay off debts, and the rest are fakes bought by my father. Now Lucy took care of everything for me. I took out a dozen invoices from the safe and handed them to her. Lucy couldn't laugh anymore, so expensive. Of course, these are antiques with great collection value. They are the wealth left by my father. If one is broken, it will be one less. I picked up a piece of ceramic shard from my feet with a distressed look on my face. It must have appreciated a lot over the years. Since you're pregnant with my father's child, I won't charge you for the increased value. Lucy was so angry that she kept humming, but I didn't care. I just liked to see her being humiliated. Barry suddenly interrupted. Lucy inherited all of your father's inheritance except for the villa and 20 million. Logically, this antique should belong to Lucy. Why should Lucy pay for destroying her own things? Barry was smarter than Lucy. He helped Lucy to confront me. He should have guessed that I did it on purpose. But I paid for these antiques. They are not included in the inheritance. Barry was speechless now. Lucy was still trying to deny it. It seemed like she was going to tear up the invoice. Gary spoke up at the right time. It doesn't matter if we lose the invoice. We can call the police and ask an expert to appraise the value of these antiques. Compensation will be based on the current market price. Gary pronounced the word now very clearly. Lucy was about to go crazy, but Barry held her back. Lucy will compensate. It's just that, Miss Vicky, you didn't call us here today to talk about this, right? Why don't we sit down and talk about business? Before I expressed my opinion, Lucy was eager to settle the account with Barry. Barry, you said you wanted to exchange more than 80 million yuan of the new energy subsidiary for 5% of the shares. Are you stupid? I already talked to her yesterday, and you ruined my plan. Barry's forehead was bulging with veins, and he clenched his fists again and again. He took a deep breath and said in a gentle tone, Lucy, don't listen to what Vicky said. I didn't do that. I watched them suspicious of each other with great interest. Oh, you sent me a message yesterday saying you wanted to change, but you denied it after one night. Men are so heartless. Gary grabbed my hand that was playing with his sleeve buttons and glared at me with some dissatisfaction. When Barry heard what I said, his face suddenly turned pale, obviously remembering how much valuable content there was in the message he sent me yesterday. At this point, if he didn't want Lucy to know the content of the conversation, he had to grit his teeth and admit it. Fortunately, Lucy's brain was not very good, and she didn't extract any useful information from Barry's expression and my words. Barry was busy cursing and losing his temper. His eyes were heavy. "Lucy, it's all my fault. I just wanted to help, but my good intentions went wrong and I was taken advantage of by someone with ulterior motives." I rolled my eyes. "You're really good at confusing right and wrong." Barry ignored my sarcasm and forcibly pulled Lucy aside to whisper something to her. Lucy nodded hesitantly, but there was still a look of doubt on her face. She seemed to trust Barry a little, but not much. After a while, Barry persuaded Lucy, "Ms. Vicky, it's useless for you to keep this share. With the current share ratio of Lucy and I, it's only a matter of time before we get this 5%. You know how much this share is worth without me telling you. Even if I wanted to give you this new energy company, Lucy wouldn't agree. But we are in love after all. I have discussed with Lucy that we can exchange several factories in the suburbs with you. I remember you mentioned to me that it is the birthplace of X Group. If it is handed over to you, it can be regarded as a son inheriting the father's business. It won't bury your father's original intention. Barry's ability to confuse right and wrong is too great. He only talked about feelings and didn't mention market value at all. My father left his inheritance to Lucy. Why do you think I care about his original intention? Barry is not only two-faced, but also scheming. If I agree to him directly, he will definitely think too much. If he becomes suspicious, these factories may not be so easy to get. After many rounds of negotiations, I pretended to be convinced by him, and finally we reached an agreement to exchange 3 factories and 20 acres of land around the factories for Gary's shares. Barry was afraid that I would go back on my word, so he immediately called a lawyer to come to my house to sign a new agreement. The moment I signed the agreement, Lucy couldn't wait to laugh at me. "Vicky, you are such an uneducated young lady. You may not know this, but all the employees in these factories are disabled and have signed lifetime employment contracts with the head office. Not only is the production speed worrying, but we also have to provide them with food and accommodation, and pay high insurance premiums for them. Vicky, just wait to be dragged down to death." Barry probably didn't expect Lucy to be so eager to show off to me. He winked at her frantically and his eyelids were about to twitch. I couldn't help but remind her on Barry's behalf, "Ms. Lucy, I have signed, but Gary hasn't signed yet. The brain is a good thing. You can use it, but you can't live without it. Barry, how does it feel to be betrayed by such a stupid teammate? It's not bad, right?" Haha, why didn't I realize Gary was so sharp-tongued? Lucy was so angry that her face turned red. Barry also stood there in a daze, his eyes rolling around, probably thinking about what to say next. He looked so distressed, his CPU is about to start smoking, so pitiful. Gary and I had no intention of making things difficult for them, but the atmosphere had gotten to the point where we felt we would feel embarrassed if we didn't give them a try. The terms were renegotiated, and Lucy added an orchard near the factory. This time, she didn't say a word until the entire process was completed. "Have a nice day. Don't forget to transfer the money for the antique to my card. Come again next time." Lucy listened to what I said and lost her balance and fell to the ground. Fortunately, Barry was quick-witted and made a meat pad for Lucy to protect her belly. That grinning expression made me feel painful, but this is also good, the scumbag and the bitch will be together forever. Barry and Lucy left, but the lawyer stayed. Lawyer Maxwell wanted to accompany me through the next steps. To be honest, I have mixed feelings about Attorney Maxwell. My dad always considered him a very good friend. The conditions and benefits in the company are the best. My father even privately invested in a law firm for him and let him work on his own. And the legal department of X Group was outsourced to him, which was very rare in a company of X Group's size. Even I grew up under the care of Lawyer Maxwell, and I have always regarded him as my own elder. But as soon as my dad got into trouble, he immediately turned to Lucy and Barry. I know that Maxwell's behavior is understandable in business, but emotionally I cannot accept it. I wanted to just let it go and handle the matter impartially. After all, Attorney Maxwell was just doing his job. He had no obligation to notify me in advance, but what I didn't expect was that Attorney Maxwell would take the initiative to talk about this matter. "Vicky, there's something I think you need to know about your father." Your father came to me to make two agreements before he died, a prenuptial agreement and a will. The prenuptial agreement was made for Miss Lucy. Your father was very anxious when he came to me. He said Miss Vicky was pregnant, but the group situation was not good right now, and he wanted to give Miss Lucy and the child an identity. But he was worried that his death would affect Miss Lucy and his children in the future, so he wanted me to make a prenuptial agreement to avoid future risks. Not long after I made the prenuptial agreement, your father came to me again. He annulled the prenuptial agreement and asked me to make this will. Your father specifically instructed me to add a gift agreement to the will. The content is roughly that even if Miss Lucy's child is not your father's blood, the will still be implemented as usual. Your father was in a very bad state that day. Before he left, he consulted me about the terms of his personal accident insurance. Your father just said at the time that he was old and wanted to buy insurance to give you extra protection. I persuaded him for an entire afternoon. If I had thought about it a little more, advised him a little more or told you in advance, he wouldn't have gotten into trouble. At this point, Attorney Maxwell lowered his head lower and lower, tears hitting the carpet. Your father was kind to me, and he asked me to keep it a secret from you, but I really can't stand Lucy and Barry, these two beasts, bullying you like this. Your father specifically asked me to add a gift agreement. I suspect that Lucy's child is not his. His condition at the time must have been related to Lucy. I was stunned. My father once joked with me about what I would think if he were to remarry, but I ignored him. My dad also took me to have dinner with Lucy. I always thought Lucy was just a lover. I didn't expect that my dad was really in a relationship with her seriously. Considering that Barry married Lucy right after my dad died, they must have been together for a long time. I couldn't sit still, so I hurriedly said goodbye to Lawyer Maxwell and went to the company. X Group has become L Group, even the logo has been changed, and in just one day, the front desk security has been replaced. All this tells me that my father's death may have been a premeditated murder. I forced my way into the president's office and saw Lucy sitting in the seat that used to be my father's, painting her nails. Barry sat on my dad's sofa and made the tea that I had tried so hard to buy for him. Lucy was about to call security when she saw me, but Barry stopped her and said, "Sit down." "How did my father die?" Barry calmly pushed a cup of brewed tea to me. "You already know, it was an accident." I picked up the teacup and splashed it on Barry's face. "You're talking nonsense." Barry took two tissues and slowly wiped the tea. "Vicky, you're still so grumpy. I have endured humiliation and hardship by your side for so many years, have you ever looked at me straight in the eye? If you really want to know, I can tell you. You already know about the prenuptial agreement given to Lucy. But you don't know the prenuptial agreement your father gave me. He asked me to marry into your family and work like a slave for you without taking a penny. And all future descendants will have to take your surname. In his eyes, I am just a tool to carry on the family line. I didn't sign the agreement, so he forced me to break up with you. Shouldn't your father die?" Barry looked like he had endured so much humiliation and it made me sick. "Have you ever loved me?" Barry stopped talking. "From the beginning you pursued me because I was the only heir. How dare you say that my father insulted you? You really make me sick." I picked up my bag and turned to leave, but Lucy spoke up. "Your father's death was an accident, Barry. It's okay to tell her now." Barry actually listened to Lucy and continued, "Narcissism runs in your family. When your father forced me to break up with you, I found Lucy and deliberately approached him. Your dad doesn't even think about how a girl would be willing to pursue him at his age. He's really stupid. After Lucy became pregnant, your father gave Lucy a prenuptial agreement that was similar to the one he gave me. Lucy called me that night. I planned to let Lucy marry him first, and then create an accident to make you and your father die of natural causes. This property is ours." Your father heard the call, and I was worried for several days, fearing that he would retaliate. But I didn't expect to receive a will. "Vicky, your father's love is much purer than yours." Blood flowed down through my clenched fingers. I was so angry that my vision went dark and I felt a strong sense of dizziness. "Barry, Lucy, you will pay the price." Their laughter reached my ears and I almost lost my balance. But I still forced myself to turn around and leave my father's office. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Gary waiting for me outside. He took me home. When I got home, the first thing I did was to take out my father's creditors' address book and call them one by one to inform them of my father's death and the subsequent debt issues. They also thoughtfully attached Lucy and Barry's contact information. I can't wait any longer, not even a moment longer. My hands couldn't stop shaking as I made the call. In fact, I was not afraid of the large amount of financial debt at all. I just wanted my dad to come back. However, there are no ifs in life. After notifying the creditors, I packed my bags overnight and went to the factories where my father started his business. Gary also wanted to quit his job and go with me, but I refused. He had his own career and I didn't want him to sacrifice anything for me. I am not a daughter that needs a man's care. I can support my own future. I want to run my father's factory well. I was very busy for the following period of time. Not only did I have to deal with a lot of big and small matters in the factory, but I also had to deal with the harassing calls from Barry and Lucy from time to time. The creditors were very powerful. The day after I made the call, they each brought their legal teams to divide up L Group. The rest of the work, of course, fell on Lucy and Barry, who at first had the energy to come to me and insult me. Eventually, they were put on the list of dishonest persons and wandered around in dark corners to avoid debt, so naturally they had no time to look for me. I was also immersed in my new life and didn't pay too much attention to their news. I wanted to live well the new life that my father had given me with his life. The last time I heard from them was when Gary sent me a message saying that Lucy and Barry were sentenced to life imprisonment and their property was confiscated for trafficking in women and children. The news said that they initially sold their own children, but later found that this was a quick way to make money, so they let Lucy go out on the street to cheat women and children. Lucy's kind and pitiful appearance is very deceptive, and Barry then transports the child he has tricked into the countryside to sell him. In just a few months, they committed dozens of crimes with serious circumstances and heinous nature. They will spend the rest of their lives in prison. Fortunately, they were found in time and the abducted women and children were successfully rescued. I cried while holding my phone and replied to Gary, "Evil will be punished." After I took over the factory, I found that the employees were very motivated at work. They were not at all like what Lucy had described as slow and unteachable. Since they knew I was the daughter of Group X, they all treated me as their own child. It was as if I had found a second home here. I worked hard with my factory employees and tripled the factory's profits. Gradually, I had enough money to invest in other industries. I think I inherited my father's business acumen and achieved a lot by accident. Finally, 5 years later, I redeemed our X Group building. Although it is not as big as before, I am very satisfied. Now I understand my father's thinking. A business should be people-oriented. I believe that under my leadership, X Group will be able to regain its vitality. Gary and I got married and had 2 children. Gary still worked in Research Institute. He protested many times and wanted to resign and come to the company to help me, but I refused. I always remember what my father said, that geniuses are born to serve the motherland. I went to the prison to see Lucy and Barry. Lucy begged me to adopt her child. She said the child was really my father's. I was skeptical, but the orphanage still took the child back. I didn't do a paternity test because the child was innocent after all. The grudges of the previous life have gone with the wind, and he still has to walk his own path in the future. Attorney Maxwell truly treats me like his daughter and has been providing legal services to my company for free. He secretly wiped away his tears on my wedding day and went to the cemetery to see my father at night. Don't ask me how I know this, because Gary and I also went there that day. But we left when we saw Attorney Maxwell, and the relationship between Attorney Maxwell and my dad was deeper than I thought. I have always lived a good life, with a loving husband and wife, a harmonious family, a successful career, and many children and grandchildren. But every time when it's late at night and everyone is asleep, I still miss my dad who loves me unconditionally. At this time, I would always go to the balcony alone and make a wish to the stars in the sky, "Dad, if there is an afterlife, I will protect you in my turn."